I remember the exact moment I realized my sister had gone out of her way to cut me out of her life. It wasn't a heated argument or a dramatic confrontation. It was a smiling photo of her, surrounded by family celebrating her baby's shower, without me. The pastel decorations, the cake shaped like a tiny bassinet, the hands on her belly, it all screamed joy. Joy I wasn't welcome to share. Scrolling through my feed that afternoon, my thumb froze on a post from my cousin Sierra. She had a way of stirring drama without ever saying my name. Her caption read, "Amazing party. Wish everyone could be here." The laughing emoji felt deliberate, like a wink meant only for me. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I simply typed, "Congratulations," and sent it off. No period, no heart emoji, no exclamation mark. Just a clean acknowledgement that I'd seen it. To anyone else, it might have seemed small, a family misunderstanding, maybe even an oversight. But I knew better. Kara, my younger sister, had been competing with me for attention since we were kids. If I made honor roll, she'd audition for the school play. If I got a promotion, she'd post about a vacation. Over the years, I learned to let it go. I built my own life, raising my son Ethan, running my company quietly and steering clear of her little power plays. That day, though, something shifted. Being excluded from a moment as big as her baby shower wasn't just petty, it was deliberate. This wasn't forgetting to send a text or misplacing an invitation. This was erasing me from one of the biggest days of her life, making sure every smiling face in those photos sent the message loud and clear. You're not part of this. It stung in a way I didn't want to admit, even to myself. I'd been nothing but supportive since she'd announced her pregnancy. I sent her prenatal vitamins when she complained about morning sickness, dropped off freezer meals when she was too tired to cook, and even made sure Ethan was excited about becoming a cousin. None of it mattered. I wasn't family enough to sit in that decorated living room, sip mocktails, and watch her open tiny onesies. And yet, I didn't lash out. I didn't call her or demand an explanation. I had learned long ago that confronting Kara usually turned me into the villain. Instead, I let my absence be as intentional as her exclusion. I closed the app, set down my phone, and went about my day. What I didn't know then was that the very thing she'd taken for granted, the thing she assumed she'd never need from me, was about to become the deciding factor in how her first days of motherhood would begin. Growing up, my family didn't need to say out loud who the favorite was. Kara had a way of drawing attention without asking for it. She was the baby of the family, the one everyone felt they had to protect. If she forgot her homework, Mom would drive it to school. If she didn't get the part in the school play, Dad would tell everyone it was because the teacher didn't appreciate her talent. I was the opposite. Self-reliant, organized, the one who could be trusted to figure things out on my own. I never resented her for it when we were younger. I figured that was just how families worked. Different roles for different kids. But as we got older, the pattern never stopped. When Kara got married to Mark, the family poured money into their wedding, while I quietly raised Ethan on my own after my divorce, without much more than polite congratulations and a store-bought cake from my parents. By 32, I had built a comfortable life for myself. I co-owned a mid-sized health insurance company with a long-time business partner, something I kept intentionally low profile. In my family, success could be ammunition for gossip, and I had no interest in hearing jokes about being the rich one. Most of them assumed I was just an office manager at some corporate building downtown. I was fine letting them believe that. When Kara announced she was pregnant, I was genuinely happy for her. Ethan was thrilled about becoming a cousin, and I thought maybe this new chapter would bring us closer. I sent her little care packages, ginger candies for nausea, cozy socks, prenatal vitamins. Whenever she complained about back pain or sleepless nights, I offered to help. She never refused, but she never really acknowledged it either. Then came the baby shower that I didn't know was happening until after it was over. Seeing every relative I grew up with, Mom, Dad, Aunt Lynn, even Grandpa, laughing in a living room decorated in pale yellows and greens, while I sat at home completely unaware, was like a cold slap. It wasn't just the party itself, it was the deliberate effort to keep it hidden from me. No group text, no casual mention, not even a slip-up from Mom. That told me all I needed to know. Kara wanted it that way. I called Mom to ask about it, my voice as calm as I could manage. "I didn't know Kara was having the shower this weekend," I said. "Oh, I thought she mentioned it," Mom replied, her tone tight. Maybe it was just for her close friends. Mom, Aunt Lynn was there. Grandpa was there. That's not just close friends. She didn't argue. She just changed the subject. That was her way. Pretend everything was fine and hope it would blow over. That night, I sat with Ethan as he worked on his homework, and he asked, "Why aren't we going to Aunt Kara's baby party?" I told him it was just for her friends, but the words felt sour in my mouth. He shrugged and went back to his math problems, but I couldn't shake the heaviness in my chest. I had no idea that the same woman who made sure I was absent from that party would soon be the one frantically trying to reach me. And when she did, it wouldn't be about a family gathering or a petty disagreement. It would be about something far more serious and far more costly than either of us could have imagined. The baby shower incident sat in the back of my mind for weeks like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I didn't bring it up again, but the fallout became clear in small ways. Family group chats I'd been part of for years suddenly felt quieter. When I scrolled back, I saw that a new group chat had been created, one I wasn't in, where most of the baby shower pictures had been shared. I only knew because Ethan borrowed my mom's phone during a visit and showed me a picture I'd never seen before. It wasn't just about missing one event anymore. Kara had turned it into a narrative. Through the grapevine, I started hearing that I had been invited, but chose not to come because I couldn't stand seeing her happy. The words stung, not because they were true, but because I knew enough of my family would believe them, without question. One afternoon, I ran into a mutual friend, Jenna, at the grocery store. She congratulated me on becoming an aunt soon, then hesitated before asking, "So, are you two okay? Kara made it sound like you were mad at her." I smiled politely and said, "We're fine," even though my jaw was tight. I wasn't about to feed Kara more material for her pity party. At home, Ethan picked up on the change in the air. He asked why we weren't seeing Aunt Kara and Uncle Mark anymore, and I told him they were busy getting ready for the baby. I wanted to protect him from the mess, but kids are perceptive. He shrugged and went back to his video game, but I caught the slight furrow in his brow. Work was my escape from the tension. My insurance company, Crestline Health, was thriving. My business partner, Rob, and I had worked for years to build a solid network of hospitals, doctors, and specialists. We had a reputation for fair pricing and transparent policies, which wasn't common in the industry. I knew every hospital on our coverage list, including Mercy Hills Medical Center, the same one Kara had mentioned in passing when talking about her birth plan months ago. It was during one of our quarterly reviews that I noticed a small change in her file, not as her sister, but as a customer. She had downgraded her plan. I saw it because our system flags policy changes for clients with certain conditions or coverage histories. Kara had switched from a full coverage plan to a lower tier one that excluded maternity care. It wasn't unusual. People sometimes cut costs without fully reading what they're giving up. But it caught my attention. I stared at her name in the database for a long moment before closing the file. I didn't think much about it again until a rainy Thursday night in late March when I was tucking Ethan into bed. My phone lit up with Mom's name. When I answered, her voice was frantic. "Hannah, it's Kara. She's in labor, but there's a problem. They're saying her insurance isn't covering the delivery. She's hysterical." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean it's not covering it?" "They said the claim was denied. Something about her plan not having maternity coverage. They want payment up front, and she's screaming at the front desk." I could picture it clearly. Kara's voice raised, her cheeks flushed, Mark pacing beside her with his hands on his head. Mom's voice cracked. "You have to help her. Isn't this your company?" "It is," I said evenly. "But she signed up for the plan she has now. That's not a mistake on our end." "Hannah, please," Mom begged. "This isn't the time to make a point." I wanted to say that I hadn't made a point. Kara had made hers months ago when she decided I didn't deserve to be part of her life unless it was convenient. I wanted to say that while she was hosting pastel-themed parties without me, I was sending her gifts and raising her nephew alone. But I bit my tongue. Instead, I asked, "Where is she?" "She's at Mercy Hills. Please just call them. They said they can't move forward without a payment or an insurance approval." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The rain tapped against the windows, and the house felt unusually quiet. Ethan was asleep, unaware that his cousin was minutes away from being born. I opened my laptop and logged into the company's internal portal. Kara's file was still there, the plan details exactly as I'd seen them weeks ago. The maternity coverage section was blank. It wasn't personal, it was policy. That's what I told myself as I closed the file again. But the truth was, it was personal. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about holding her accountable. Actions had consequences, and for once I wasn't going to shield her from them. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Sierra. "Wow, so you're just letting your sister get screwed over in the hospital?" Classy. I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of anger and clarity. Sierra wasn't in that delivery room trying to swipe a credit card that would be declined. Sierra wasn't the one who had been erased from every important family moment for years. I put my phone down and went to bed. I knew the storm was coming, and for once I was ready for it. The next morning, I woke to a string of missed calls and texts. Most were from Mom, a few from Mark, and one from Kara that was just a single line. "How could you let this happen?" The messages from Mom were frantic. She'd written things like, "They're saying it's going to be over $28,000, and they won't release her without a payment plan." There were even a few guilt-laced gems like, "She just had a baby, Hannah. You're really going to leave her like this?" I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee, scrolling through them one by one. Part of me wanted to fire back and remind them that Kara wasn't a helpless teenager. She was an adult who had made choices, and one of those choices had been to cut me out of her life. She hadn't considered me important enough to invite to her baby shower, but now I was supposed to be the first call when she needed saving. I closed my phone and opened my laptop, logging into the Crestline Health portal again. Kara's account popped up immediately, her policy details glaring at me from the screen. Coverage, Tier 2, Basic Plan, Maternity Care, not included. It was all there in black and white. She had downgraded her plan 3 months earlier, presumably to save on monthly premiums. I clicked into the change request and saw her own electronic signature at the bottom. In this business, I'd seen people cry, yell, even threaten lawsuits when they realized too late what their plan didn't cover. It was never easy to stand by the rules, especially when it was family. But policies existed for a reason. Once you made an exception for one person, the line blurred for everyone. I stared at the Override and Approve button at the top of the screen. I had the authority to click it. One click, and the hospital would be told to process everything under full coverage. Kara would go home with her baby, and this entire financial nightmare would vanish before it even began. It would have been so easy. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. If I stepped in now, nothing would change between us. She'd go right back to freezing me out of family gatherings, twisting stories so I looked like the problem, and expecting me to bail her out when it suited her. I remembered the baby shower photos, the smiling faces, the pastel decorations, my mother holding a gift bag with my sister's name on it while my name wasn't even mentioned. That wasn't just a party. It was a clear statement about where I stood in my own family. This wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. I had spent years quietly swallowing disrespect to keep the peace, thinking that if I just stayed calm, they'd eventually see my worth. They never did. And in this moment, I realized that if I bailed her out again, I'd be reinforcing the same pattern that had kept me invisible for so long. The phone rang again. It was Mom. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. "Hannah, please, she's in tears. Mark's trying to figure out a payment plan, but they want $10,000 up front. She just had a baby girl. Do you really want her to come home to this kind of stress? You can fix this. I know you can. Please don't let pride get in the way." Pride. That word lodged in my throat. This wasn't about pride. This was about self-respect. If helping her meant erasing every time she had pushed me aside, then it wasn't help. It was enabling. I called Rob, my business partner. "If someone calls about policy number 4865, I want you to tell them the plan stands as written. No exceptions." He hesitated. "You sure? This sounds personal." "It is," I said. "That's why I'm not changing it." Once I hung up, the weight of my decision settled in. It wasn't pleasant. I wasn't celebrating or feeling triumphant. I knew the fallout would be ugly. But I also knew that for once, I wasn't going to bend just to keep from being painted as the bad guy. By midday, the texts turned from pleading to furious. Mark accused me of ruining their daughter's first week of life. Sierra jumped in with a snide, "Guess she really showed her true colors, huh?" I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I closed my laptop, poured another cup of coffee, and sat by the window while Ethan played with his Legos. He had no idea what was going on, and I wanted to keep it that way. In his world, cousins weren't born into debt, and sisters didn't freeze each other out of milestones. I envied that kind of innocence. By evening, I had one final message from Mom. "I can't believe you would do this to your own sister. She'll never forgive you." I put the phone down and let out a slow breath. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe Kara would never forgive me. But for the first time in years, I could live with that. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. 2 days after Kara came home from the hospital, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find her standing there, pale and tired, with her hair pulled into a messy bun. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt, and in her arms was a small pink bundle. My new niece. Her eyes were red, not from the baby, but from crying. Behind her, Mark leaned against their old sedan, arms crossed tightly. He didn't look at me. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside without saying a word. She walked to the couch and sat down slowly, holding the baby close. I sat across from her, giving her the space to speak first. "You could have fixed this," she began, her voice trembling. "The hospital bills they're insane, Hannah. We don't have that kind of money. I know you saw what happened and you just let it happen." I kept my tone even. "You changed your plan. You signed off on it yourself. I didn't let it happen. You made a choice and the policy worked the way it's supposed to." Her eyes flashed. "Don't talk to me like I'm some stranger off the street. I'm your sister." "And I was your sister when you had a baby shower and didn't even invite me," I said. My voice wasn't raised, but it was firm. "I was your sister when you let people believe I was bitter and didn't want to be there. I was your sister when you left me out of group chats and family photos. But when you needed me, really needed me, suddenly I mattered again." She shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at the baby. "That was different. I didn't think you'd care about the shower." "That's not the point, Kara. You didn't think I was important enough to be part of it. And now you want me to bend the rules, risk my company, and take on a $30,000 bill for you because we shared DNA?" Mark walked in from outside, clearly unable to stay quiet any longer. "It's not just about DNA, Hannah. It's about family helping family. Isn't that what you preach to everyone else?" I turned to him. "Family helping family goes both ways, but what I've learned is that in this family, it's always me doing the helping, and you two taking. And when I stop, suddenly I'm the villain." Kara's voice cracked. "You're acting like this is some kind of punishment." "It's not punishment," I said. "It's reality. Actions have consequences. You made financial decisions without thinking about the risks. You pushed me out of your life when it was convenient, and now you're seeing what that feels like when you actually need someone." Silence filled the room for a long moment. The baby made a small sound, and Kara adjusted the blanket around her. I could see the exhaustion in her posture, the weight of new motherhood settling on her shoulders alongside the crushing stress of medical debt. Part of me ached for her, but another part, the part that had been dismissed and minimized for years, knew this was a turning point I couldn't undo by caving in. Kara finally stood up, her face hardening. "I guess I know where we stand now." I stood too. "We've always known where we stand, Kara. You just never had to see it before." She looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead she turned and walked to the door. Mark followed without a word. I watched from the window as they got into the car, the baby seat in the back barely visible. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. She told me everything. "I can't believe you would turn your back on her at a time like this." I didn't respond. I'd said everything that needed saying face to face. The next morning, Sierra posted something vague on Facebook about some people being cold-hearted no matter how much you've done for them. It got the usual likes and comments from relatives who had no idea what actually happened. I didn't bother defending myself. But later that week, I received an email from one of Kara's friends, someone I barely knew. She wrote, "I heard what happened. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Sometimes, people only learn when they face the reality they've been ignoring." It was the first time in days that I felt like someone understood. I knew the family narrative would twist this into something ugly. I'd be the sister who abandoned her sibling in the hospital, the aunt who didn't care about her niece, the business owner who cared more about money than people. But I also knew my truth. I hadn't abandoned her. I'd simply stopped erasing my own boundaries to clean up her messes. The image of her standing in my living room, holding her baby with tear-stained cheeks, stayed with me. Not because it made me feel guilty, but because it reminded me that love without respect is nothing more than obligation, and I was done living my life out of obligation. The weeks after Kara's visit were quiet, at least on my end. I didn't reach out and she didn't call again. My phone still buzzed with occasional group messages about family updates, mostly from Mom, but Kara's name never appeared in them. I could tell from the way messages were worded that there was now an unspoken divide. They'd arrange get-togethers without saying outright that I wasn't invited, but I'd see photos online later. At first, that stung. It was hard not to feel the familiar ache of being left out, of watching my family gather without me. But as the days passed, I realized something had shifted inside me. I wasn't losing sleep over it this time. I wasn't lying awake wondering what I could do to make them like me more. I wasn't replaying conversations in my head or crafting texts to smooth things over. For the first time in years, I felt free from the exhausting job of constantly proving my worth to people who didn't want to see it. Ethan noticed the changes, too. "Are we going to see Aunt Kara's baby?" he asked one night at dinner. "Yes," I said. "We'll visit when things settle down." I didn't want him growing up thinking family rifts had to last forever, but I also didn't want him thinking love meant letting people walk all over you. The balance between those two lessons was tricky, but I was determined to teach it. A month later, Kara texted me. It wasn't a long message, just, "I know things got ugly. I'm sorry for how I handled some of it." Some of it, not all of it. I read it twice before deciding how to respond. I typed back, "Thank you for saying that. I hope you and the baby are doing well." It wasn't an invitation to rehash everything, but it was a step. 2 weeks after that, Mom called and said Kara wanted to bring the baby over. When they arrived, I opened the door to see my sister looking worn but calmer than before. She handed me my niece, a tiny warm bundle smelling faintly of baby lotion. Her little face was scrunched in sleep, her tiny fingers curling around mine. For a few minutes, the tension between us faded. We talked about the baby's name, her first pediatric visit, how she was sleeping or not sleeping. Kara didn't mention the bills, and I didn't bring them up. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was civility, and for now, that was enough. Ethan was thrilled to meet his cousin. He sat on the couch next to me, watching her with wide eyes. "She's so small," he whispered. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "You were that small once." When Kara left that day, she hugged me briefly. It wasn't the kind of hug we used to give each other years ago, but it wasn't stiff or cold either. Just a cautious, tentative gesture from someone testing the ground between us. In the months that followed, we saw each other at a few family gatherings. Things stayed polite, though not particularly close. The gossip from Sierra eventually died down, and the Facebook jab stopped. Life moved forward. Kara and Mark worked out a payment plan for the hospital bills, and while I knew it was a financial strain for them, I also knew they'd had a hard but valuable lesson in planning for the unexpected. As for me, the experience reshaped how I saw my role in my family. I had always been the fixer, the reliable one, the person who stepped in no matter how I'd been treated. I thought that was what made me a good daughter, sister, and aunt, but all it really did was teach certain people that I'd tolerate anything. Standing my ground with Kara wasn't easy. It didn't feel triumphant or satisfying in the moment. It felt heavy. But over time, that weight lifted, replaced by a quiet confidence that I hadn't had before. I realized I could still be compassionate without letting people take advantage of me. I could still care for my family without sacrificing my self-respect. One evening, months later, I was closing up my laptop after a long day of work when Ethan asked, "Are you glad you didn't help Aunt Kara with the bill?" His question caught me off guard. Why do you ask? He shrugged. Because you always tell me to think before I do things, and you always say, if someone treats you bad, you don't have to let them keep doing it. Was that what you did? I nodded slowly. Yes, Ethan, that's exactly what I did. I wanted her to understand that the way we treat people matters, especially when we need them. He thought about that for a moment, then went back to his Legos. Kids move on quickly, but I knew the seed had been planted. The truth is, love without respect will drain you dry. You can pour yourself into people, but if they see you as a safety net instead of a person, you'll never be anything more than a tool for their convenience. It took me years to see that. Now, I choose when and how I show up for people. I no longer do it just because they share my last name. I do it when it's right, when it's earned, when it's reciprocated. And I've learned that setting those boundaries doesn't make you cold, it makes you honest. People like to say blood is thicker than water, as if family ties can excuse anything. But the truth is, the relationships worth holding on to, whether by blood or by choice, are the ones built on trust, respect, and mutual care. Without those, family is just a word. And I'm no longer interested in being part of a family that doesn't value the person I am, beyond what I can give. So that's how I learned one of the hardest lessons about family. Not everyone who shares your blood will treat you like family, and you don't have to keep proving your worth to people who refuse to see it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to step back and let people face the consequences of their own choices. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to choose between helping someone and protecting your own boundaries, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments below because these are the conversations we need to have. And if you found this story engaging, make sure to give the video a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that hit close to home. Your support helps keep these stories coming.